Nestled at the foot of Mount Mansfield, the highest peak in Vermont, and hidden in the woods, are the remains of the first ski lodge in Stowe, the Ranch Camp. The camp lives on in stories that are told by children and grandchildren of the settlers, families who live in Stowe Forks, where the ranch and the Notch Brooks meet, and those who ski and hike the trails of the valley. Listen now to tales and music from a time past but living still, in Stories of Ranch Camp.
My name is Greg Spear, and I own the Inn at Turner Mill, right at the foot of Ranch Brook and the entrance to the Ranch Valley, which is a very historic spot in Vermont in that it encompasses three of the major developments that occurred in Vermont over history, and that is farming and logging and skiing. And I'd like to talk about the development of Ranch Camp and how important it was to Stowe and Vermont. In 1843, Joseph Bashaw cut and cleared for a little farm, which was called then the Ranch, and that's how it got its name. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, as the need for logs and lumber increased, farming kind of fell off in the Ranch Valley, and logging increased. At that point, they started to develop logging camps where you could stay and work. Beyond that, around 1912, evidently there were three Scandinavian families that lived in Stowe. And there was one on Shaw Hill, and one on Edson Hill, and one on West Hill. And although they couldn't speak very good English, they could ski really well, and they were very good carpenters and were able to fashion their own skis. And that's basically, I think, how the notion of skiing started in this valley. A little later, right around 1920, Craig Burt, a lumberman who was a lumber cruiser and lumberman, decided that he'd switch from timber cruising on snowshoes to skis. He'd been working with snowshoes for years and years and found it really hard and difficult to get around 11 or 12 hours a day on snowshoes. So he decided he'd try, having seen probably these Scandinavians zipping up and down hills, that he'd try skiing and see if that would be a little more efficient. And he did, and it was. And so that he was probably the first person to ski in the Ranch Valley. It wasn't long after Craig Burt was cruising around the Ranch Valley that the popularity of skiing in general started to take off. In fact, jumping was really kind of an exciting part of skiing that they did, and clubs were forming, and they had winter carnivals, and I think there was even a jump down behind what's now the elementary school. As logging continued, so did skiing, and people became interested in both. As the logging expanded, so did the logging camps and the logging roads. In the interest of economics, they really needed to figure out a way to bring money into Vermont in the winter. And there wasn't really much to do here except for logging. So the ranch camp developed, and they built larger camps and cut more trails and more roads, and more people were able to take advantage of that. And then a curious thing happened. One winter after hunting season, when the snow came, the people that were using ranch camp as a hunting camp decided they would come back when the snow was there and use it as a ski camp. And so ranch camp was really the first destination lodging for skiing in Stowe. Again, as years went by, more ski trails were added and more people were interested in coming to Stowe. So the first true skiing transportation that developed was from Burlington. They came on trains from Burlington into Waterbury. Then I think there was a shuttle that brought them up to the Green Mountain Inn, and from there they took another shuttle, either sleigh or whatever, to the mouth of the Stowe Forks where we are now. And then they'd ski into ranch camp and stay for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then from Burlington, the trains brought people up from Boston and New York, and it really became quite popular. In 1936, the United States Eastern Ski Association was holding their championships in the springtime, I guess it was. There was no other place that had suitable snow because there was bad weather that year. And so they decided to hold it at Stowe. Even though there's no lifts here, they had great trails, and evidently they counted 1,200 cars going up Harlow Hill to go to the Eastern Ski Championships. And that was really the beginning of the masses coming to Stowe to ski and race and vacation.
Why did I join the CCC? Why did I join the CCC? Why did I join the CCC? This old hard labor's killing me. I have to work most every day. $5 a month is my pay. I'm just wasting my life away. Why did I join the CCC? They treat me like a dirty dog. I have to slave down in a bar. They treat me like a hog. Oh, why did I join the CCC? I was just thinking about that song as I came out of the woods after clearing wilderness trails last Saturday. Old tune. Not at all appropriate to the way we feel about the CCC in the valley right now. The CCC is responsible for creating most of the trails that come down into the Ranch Camp Valley. And the CCC itself was created back in the 30s in the Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps. I think I've got that right. It was designed to provide meaningful work for men that didn't have any work. It would give them a place to sleep and food, a very low wage, as the song says. But in those days it was hard to get anything that would even give you enough food to eat or a place to live, so it seemed like a pretty good deal. Now the CCC usually did sort of infrastructure stuff like dams and roads, and I guess on them the work really did resemble work. It was maybe not that much fun. But Charlie Lord got charge of a crew of CCC people to cut ski trails into the Ranch Valley and on Mansfield. And I'll bet that for him, and for them, especially the ones of them that were skiers, this was a long ways away from bog and hog and working. This is more like a rabbit running a lettuce stand. This must have been really fun. Get to go up there in the woods and lay out trails and then spend a whole lot of time working on them. With a big crew, even dynamite, to get them smooth, perfect, with the idea in mind that you could ski on them come the wintertime. In the old days there, they had some fairly funny equipment, and you look at it, and you look at the pictures of them with their baggy pants and clothes that look more like work clothes than they do like ski clothes. My father was a skier in the 30s, and I inherited his skis, so I know what they were like, and I inherited his boots too. The skis were full length, high as you could reach, funny little pointy tips above the regular tip of the ski. No plastic base of any kind, just a wooden base, and you put lacquer on it. The edges were segmented steel edges, and you could see the screws, and I think most of the edges were still there when I got the skis. The boots were very, very soft. In fact, I even ran a cross-country race on the same boots that I used for alpine skiing. Little Green Mountain boots with square toes. Bindings were solid bear trap binding, no release possible there. And a cable that had 3 possible attachments. It could either pivot from the toe, so it was totally free like a cross-country touring binding, or there was a loop that attached to right around the instep of your foot so that it was partly free in the heel, which would have been great for telemarking, but I don't think I ever saw anybody actually make a telemark turn. And then you could also fasten the cable right near the heel, so it was completely fastened down, but nothing in that really supported your ankle at all. These old guys in the 30s, you'd think, looking at that, they couldn't have been very serious about their skiing. Man, you go out in the woods and ski on that, you have to be kidding. But no, that's not the case at all. They actually ran downhill races on Steeple, on the Bruce, and on Chin Clip over on Mansfield, and from having skied on those skis, I think that'd be terrifying, going down steeple as fast as you could on skis that didn't turn any better than that and had so little control and so little chance of releasing. But they did that, so there was no shortage of courage, there was no shortage of daring. The other thing they used to do was make as many as 3 runs a day on steeple, and that all the way from the ranch camp all the way up to Skytop, and down 1 trip a day is like way plenty for me. And to do 3 of them, man, that's a lot of work, so I guess we can rule out laziness there too. When it was all over, they could come down into ranch camp, to the camp itself, and get a bowl of chili, place to bunk for the night, get up the next day and take another few runs. Well, when I came to Stowe in the mid-60s, those buildings in ranch camp were still there. We used to come down the Bruce after skiing on the mountain, and the Bruce was terrible that time too. It was all grown over with brush and hardly anybody knew that it existed. But we'd ski down it, ski past the buildings in ranch camp and down to the Stowe School. But it was along about that time that the students decided that the ranch camp buildings were a great place to party. And the Burt Corporation that owned those buildings thought, well, it was only a matter of time before the students burned those buildings down with themselves inside it, so maybe the best thing to do would be burn those buildings down with the students not inside it. So that's what they did. And that was the end of the ranch camp itself. The eclipse of skiing in the ranch camp continued for quite a few years until about 12 years ago. John Higgins started poking around, finding old articles and old maps and finding out what the scene was really like back in the 30s when these trails were much more used than when they were being created. A lot of the trails still existed. We had Skytop and we had the Burt, which used to be the Conway. We had the Bruce, but most noticeably missing were Dewey and the Steeple. So John set about finding where they were and reestablishing them on the ground. He found Dewey fairly quickly because Dewey was mostly old logging roads, and it was just a matter of connecting the dots and following the natural lay of the land, then going out and cutting it and reestablishing Dewey. But one of the most important things he found while he was going on Dewey was a toboggan cache. A little low building with a peak roof, shingled, just big enough to hold a toboggan. But unfortunately, it was also just big enough to hold a porcupine, and when the porcupine moved into his condominium in blatant defiance of Act 250, he failed to provide adequate restrooms facilities for himself. And so when there was an interest in taking that little toboggan shack down and putting it in a ski museum, they thought, well, maybe not. Maybe we won't. So it's still there in the woods. But what it did do was establish the point where upper cutoff of Steeple, lower cutoff of Steeple, and Dewey intersect. This little toboggan hut was on the map. So once we found the toboggan hut, we knew we had that point correct. And from there it was fairly easy to reestablish the lower cutoff and the upper cutoff. Our guess was confirmed when we later found the toboggan itself on the lower cutoff. To bring us back up to the current, we eventually found where the steeple went. I think we got it fairly correct, and we just came out of the woods just this other weekend with a whole bunch of latter-day CCC type people up clearing all of those trails again, getting them open one more time. Seems like every year there's more and more people that are interested in coming and reopening those trails and making sure that they're open. No hogs, no bogs. Pretty nice day at the mountain, actually. There were a few dogs, but I don't think anybody was slaving too hard. I don't think that skiing as it was in the 30s is ever going to make us rich and famous, but it's really nice to see that there's a re-interest in it, and people are becoming more and more involved in skiing in the backcountry. Well, this is Jeff from Mansfield Cross Country. Thank you.
Tales of the rustic charm of Ranch Camp are retold firsthand by people who grew up in Stowe. They hunted, tapped trees, and skied in the valley, calling the camp home for the night.
Lyndall Heyer. I have stories about the ranch camp that I got from my father, Larry Heyer, who came to Stowe in the late 30s. Around 1938, 1939, he used to come to Stowe to ski, and he would climb up to the top of the mountain with skins and ski down, and often ski to the ranch camp, which was at the end of Ranch Road. At that time, there were no lifts, there were no trails, just a few trails. One of them was called the Bruce, which was the first official ski trail cut on the mountain because there were no lifts. It didn't have to go anywhere particular. It didn't have to end up at the base of a chairlift. They cut it to go to the ranch camp, which today is sort of in the middle of nowhere. But back then, it was a great little ski center. It's located about 2 or 3 miles up a little dirt road that ends up at Route 108. When my father was here, he decided to move to Stowe and build the first ski lodge. And it turned out that he bought land right where the ranch road ends at Route 108. So his inn was in the same area as people would end up showing up to stay at the ranch camp. The ranch camp had no way to get in there in the winter. There wasn't a road. As a matter of fact, the mountain road was simply a dirt track that often got extremely muddy. My father remembers having to get out of his car and lift it out of the way of a rut so another car could get by. People would show up to the ranch camp. They would often come to Stowe on the train, and they would get a ride by taxi to the bottom of my father's inn. And then they'd have to figure out how to get out there. Now, if they hadn't been there before, they would have no way of knowing. Many of them didn't know what they were in for because they would show up with fancy city clothes on and a suitcase, as well as their skis. And they were certainly not prepared to walk 3 miles in the mud and dirt and snow. He did have a dog sled that he would pick people up in if he knew they were coming. And he would bring the dog sled out the 2 or 3 miles to the end of the road and pick people up. Some people were just expecting a hotel, I guess. And they would walk up the driveway to my father's inn and knock on the door and sort of sheepishly ask how they got out to ranch camp. And Dad would say, well, there's really no way, you gotta walk. And many times they would just end up staying at our inn if they weren't the intrepid type. A lot of people came who knew what they were in for, and they'd have all their walking stuff on or snowshoes or something like that, and they'd be raring to go. Back in those days, skiers were a pretty tough lot. When the ranch camp was very primitive, there was a big cook stove with a cook and sort of bunks around it, and a separate building across the little road that had a bunch of bunk beds that you can still actually see the remnants of the bunks on the floor where they burned it down. I remember when they burned it down. That was really sad. But the people that were intrepid there to get there were pretty hardcore. They had to hike to ski, and you hike the mountain 1 or 2 times a day, and you're pretty darn tired. And you came back and got a big meal with a chef there on the big wood stove, and slept well. When I was growing up, there was probably a 20 or 25 year period where trails like the Bruce were just basically forgotten by 99% of the people, because the trails on the mountain were built. They were exciting and interesting and narrow and twisty. There was the nosedive, and hayride and the front four and some great trails that went off by the nosedive. And people didn't have the need to really ski anywhere else but these gnarly, narrow, twisty, difficult trails. The grooming wasn't very good. Oftentimes the trails weren't groomed at all. And so trails like the Bruce, which went nowhere, were just totally forgotten. And it only started as a renaissance probably 15 or 20 years ago, when grooming got so good and the trails all got widened and were always buffed perfectly from edge to edge. There was very few places you could ski on the mountain anymore that were just difficult, really challenging trails that were kind of in their natural state. The goat is pretty much the only one. And so people started going back and finding these old trails. And there's so many of them besides the Bruce, and Whirl Away, and they just go on and on, the Houston. And people have rediscovered them and started using them a lot more because skiing on the regular ski mountains has become so kind of sugar-coated and easy. And so it's kind of neat to see this revival in the old trails and the group of people that really want to get a kind of skiing in that's more challenging. And you don't get more than a couple runs a day, but they're really meaningful.
This is Merton Pike. Well, my experiences in the ranch camp go way, way back when I was either junior high or early high school. And one of my classmates was part of the Burke family. David would take some of the kids and the neighbors, as you can see from the picture you showed me, up there to be fed and wander through the woods. And we had to hike in from the Forks. I don't remember, was it a covered bridge there then? I don't remember whether that was ever a covered bridge or not. I just can't remember. But anyway, it's about 1.5 miles, I believe, up there. And the time that I went, David was being urged by his parents to go up in there and tap some trees and make some maple syrup. So it was in the spring of the year, probably late March or early April. And of course we were fed like everybody else was fed up there by George Campbell. That was the cook's name. And he took over apparently the last crew they had cutting logs up there. And then they made him stay on to help with the kids that were coming in. And they let him stay overnight and ski on the logging trails, cross-country skiing on the logging trails. I wasn't ever a skier. There at the Forks, there was a sawmill, and I remember that sawmill working. Went up and got some sawdust with my dad's 1929 Chevrolet truck. But I went up anyway, and we hiked in, and George Campbell greeted us, and David and I were getting ready to go out into the woods to see where we were going to tap the trees. Long toward night we came in and we had a feast. Then, of course, we played cards or something in the evening. Went to bed. The next morning, woke up, and David took his bitstock that he drilled holes with, and I took a hammer to drive the spouts in, and we started up through the trail. And we saw a bobcat across the trail. And we thought, well, we'll go chasing him. I don't know what we'd have done if the bobcat hadn't run away from us, but that's the tools we had. the hedgehogs, porcupines, were chewing ranch camp all to pieces. And so that night that I stayed, we went out and we captured a bunch of them. And the next day, while David and I were out in the woods, George opened them up and rescued the livers from them and cooked liver for supper. Now, I didn't like liver, but I learned that I liked liver the way he cooked it. So I learned to eat liver by eating porcupine liver. And the reason I think that I liked it was that he kind of cooked it till it was almost charcoal. My mother didn't cook it that much, so that made it easier for me to eat liver.
With the building of the ski lifts, the camp was closed in 1950, and the Ranch Valley trails were overshadowed for a while. But a new generation arrived and recovered what had been lost to time.
I am Carol Hillman Van Dyke, and I grew up in Stowe, alpine skiing on the mountain, trying to keep up with my friends like Lyndall in the Mount Mansfield Ski Club. In the 60s, Nordic skiing was just not an option in my childhood realm of Stowe. In the 70s, I first tried cross-country skiing at Trapp's newly opened Nordic Center. But it wasn't until the first winter of my married life, that was in 79 to 80, that beyond my nuptial bliss, I became infatuated with cross-country skiing. Mansfield's Touring Center's first manager, Dudley Rood, hired me as part of the winter work crew to instruct, groom, and sweep trails. Before the ski season, we spent a couple of weeks working on the trails. It was hardcore work out in the elements, but as things like that are, it was full of memorable fun. Peter Rush, son of Sepp, was our trail foreman, and in addition to brushing some of the established trails, we cut Ranch Valley Cruise, a lovely rolling trail that mainly follows a contour, crisscrossing old logging roads, and takes you through groves of beech trees scratched by bear. Peter strategically marked the trail around this huge glacial erratic. A boulder I consider a natural feature highlighted the entire Groom Trail system. Since we had our hands full maintaining the few kilometers that were recently built, back then no one ventured much beyond the Groom Trail system, except for maybe an occasional run down the Bruce. The original ranch camp building shell was still standing then, and we would go by it on our daily rounds. Now, it is a small field of grass in the woods with vestiges of its past hidden amongst the weeds, and remains a special spot along the scenic Ranch Brook and Burt Trail. Many of the trail names, Timber Lane, Double Bit, Peavy, are logging nomenclature. Leaving us clues to the legacy of Ranch Valley's rich past.
My name is Neil Van Dyke, and I'm the team leader for Stowe Mountain Rescue. I've been involved with search and rescue around the backcountry in Stowe since our team formed in 1980. We've had quite a few rescues out in the ranch camp area. With me is Carl Wrighton.
Hello.
Carl's done a lot of exploring, and I've gone with him a few times looking at old former sites for toboggans up in the ranch camp area, and there are several of them. And Carl, you want to tell us a little bit about some of your discoveries up there?
Well, I know the first one, I had the good fortune of finding one of the original toboggans that date back, I believe, to the early 1940s. I found it hiking around in the fall time and stashed it until winter when I could extricate it from Ranch Valley. I ended up restoring it. The ski museum was good enough to accept it as a donation as part of a historical exhibit for the Mount Mansfield Ski Patrol.
Where was that one located?
That one was at the intersection of the Overland and the Bruce Trail. Toboggan caches were scattered all around the Mansfield region and on the Mansfield proper where they used to do the downhill skiing. They just used spruce logs, I believe, to build the sides of most of them. At least the ones I've found have all been kind of log structures with galvanized tin roof. They're about 7 or 8 feet long, just long enough to fit in the toboggans, which were back in those days, they didn't have fiberglass. The one I found, which was in good shape, seemed to have, it looked like it was a piece of culvert that had been cut and then somewhat stretched out to make the prow of the toboggan, and then reinforced with some metal stays. So it looked like kind of the classic wooden toboggan that are still around today. Most of the time in these caches, I remember looking in the one on Nosedive and the toboggan was long gone, and they elevated them about 5 feet off the ground. When the snows come, those caches end up being relatively close to the ground sometime in end of February, middle of March. But none of those structures have survived the 60 years. There's actually a few maps that are still in circulation. I know there's one down at the Ski Museum, one in the Nordic Center up at Mount Mansfield on the wall up there that has little crosses where they had all these toboggan caches. Of course, the reason was then they also didn't have snow machines. So if somebody was hurt, they didn't want to have to haul these toboggans all the way out to get somebody. And these people were maybe a little more self-sufficient than people that head out into the backcountry nowadays too. So if they were with a local person that knew the system, they may have already taken some steps to start the rescue.
Clearly, to have that many toboggans out in the ranch camp backcountry, there was a lot of skiing activity back at that time. And we see a lot today, but approach rescues in a little different way. We don't stash equipment back in the woods anymore. We typically bring it in with us, and both Carl and I have been involved in a number of rescue missions up in the ranch camp. One of the first things we often do with rescues out there is check with Jeff Baldwin these days, or John Higgins when he was around, because they knew that backcountry so well. They knew where the train traps were, and they could often send us in the right direction or tell us of an old logging road or ski trail that would give us easier access. So they were a great resource for us. There was one particular rescue on New Year's Eve that I think we both remember quite well. The snowboarder who was headed down the Bruce Trail and split off from his group and thought he was going to take a shortcut and never ended up at the bottom. So we had a bunch of folks out, and Carl was one of them. It was a cold, snowy, wintry night. And
myself and another former ski patroller, Bill Westerman, came down the Bruce Trail. The guy that split off was foolish enough to leave his group, and that's one of those things that you learn not to do. He ended up leaving some discernible tracks after a while, which we happened upon. He had hunkered himself down underneath a root ball that had tipped over. If we hadn't found his tracks, it was still snowing pretty heavily, and I'm not sure how many more hours hours might have gone by before his tracks would have been covered completely, and he was happy to see us when we roused him from his little hiding spot, that's for sure.
I think from the time we were called till the time we found him, it was probably about 5 hours.
Is Scott Dorworth, and I'm the manager of the Stowe Mountain Resort Cross Country Ski Center. This organization is the custodians of the Ranch Valley and the Nordic ski trail system that we've built there in the last 25 years. We have about 20 miles of cross-country ski trail, which in Nordic lingo is about 35 kilometers. It's mostly improved logging roads. We have to maintain them annually, mid-December to late April. We have a ski season in the Ranch Valley. The snow blows in there so heavily, and it's a long, cold season up there, so it's great for Nordic skiing. We have about 7,000 to 8,000 skier visits per year, many of them destination tourists, but we do have a good locals base. Junior programs, a school program with 75 kids. Every Tuesday we have high school events, and just all manner of people enjoy the trail system. The locals call it the Mansfield Touring Center. The proper name is Stowe Mountain Resort Cross Country. Many of our visitors enjoy the outdoors and all kinds of activities. We have many snowshoe enthusiasts around. We've made new snowshoe trails that are very primitive, and that's a beautiful activity on a cold winter's day when often it's just too exposed on the mountain for skiing. People can come down and enjoy a nice snowshoe in the protected, sheltered Ranch Valley. It's very protected against exposure down there with hardly any wind. Many times when the lifts are closed in the mountains, we get people coming down to enjoy snowshoeing and a little cross-country skiing. Special events, we have an annual Stowe Derby, which is a ski race from the top of the mountain to the village. It's about 10 miles, and most of the winners use Nordic ski equipment, although the alpine skiers always think they're going to have an advantage of the first 6 miles downhill, but it's that last 5 miles to the finish off across the flat that really gets them.
My name is Margaret Higgins. My father is the late John Higgins. He ran the touring center at Stowe Mountain Resort for many years. His passion was the Ranch Valley. He spent many years reclaiming the backcountry from decades of nature and neglect. He hiked the land with his dog, twisting hobble bushes as he went to mark his path, looking for newer growth, the lay of the land, scanning topical maps, looking over old ski maps, and digging into papers that lay for the trash collectors. Papers that had been written by the original creators of the trail system. Over the years, Jeff Baldwin and my dad, along with other enthusiastic people, slowly reclaimed the trails. The Ranch Valley was special to my dad and to many others. My fondest memory is of all the John Higginses of today. The nibblers, as my dad would call them, the ones that devoted their Saturdays in the fall to cleaning up the backcountry trails, nibbling away at the tree branches and removing fallen trees to make the winter skiing more enjoyable. The Mark Struleys, Jay Rosses, Jeff Baldwins, Lackeys, Millers, Spears, and Gene Kistners and crew of the world, who have ventured off the beaten path and continue to explore the Ranch Valley. Their enthusiastic energy continue to feed the fire that is so hard to describe.
Thanks to the early pioneers and the present-day preservers, the spirit of Ranch Camp lives on. In the words of the pioneer Craig O. Burt, each and all of us should at some time hear the roar of the sea and the moaning of the mountains. They are dissimilar, but they, I think, arouse the same emotions in everybody. Perhaps they give us a humility that keeps us safe, both physically and mentally. I've been asked if people who live in Vermont are at all conscious of the beauty of their everyday surrounds. The answer is an emphatic yes.
you.